Welcome to another episode of the Reboot Chronicles, a no-holds-barred forum with global leaders, authors, entrepreneurs, and CEOs about how organizations stay focused on growth and innovation in unprecedented times. I'm your host, Dean Tobias, coming to you live from Revive's North American headquarters in Chicago, and we would like to thank you for joining us from around the globe today. I'd like to welcome Alan Hahn, the CEO of Myco Technologies, to the Reboot Chronicles, a serial entrepreneur who for decades has been scaling and taking companies to positive exits for their investors. Alan has rebooted himself from the tech industry now into the food industry. Myco uses fungi-based food processing platforms to transform the flavor of agricultural products, something that's really critical right now. And so far, Alan has raised $120 million from a stellar group of VCs and private equity groups, including Monotree, where I'm an advisor, and top food companies, including Continental Grain, Greenleaf, and Tyson. Alan, it's really good to see you again. How are you?
I'm doing great, Dean. Thanks for having me on today. Very excited to be here and talk to you.
Yeah, always a pleasure to talk about tech and food together, one of my favorites. You know, when I told our sponsor we were doing an episode on mushrooms, they thought we were going to do it on psychedelics and our ratings would go through the roof. But for those of you that have tuned in for that, this is really about the future of health, wellness, and food. You know, our paths have crossed so many times as serial tech CEOs, and I'm really curious, what led you to food?
Yeah, my wife asked me that quite a bit in the early days. You know, I had spent my early days Silicon Valley, high tech, cybersecurity, multi-factor authentication.
Right.
What really changed me was I was diagnosed as a type 2 diabetic, and I was shocked when the doctor told me the results.
Right.
And I really started thinking about health and nutrition, what I knew about it, and I realized everything I learned about it came from friends and family, and it wasn't very accurate. So I started taking classes, learned all about nutrition, and got off all the medication, lost 30 pounds.
Wow.
Got my A1C down to 5.2. So you can address this with lifestyle changes. And so an opportunity came up to look at Myco before it was formed, meeting two scientists and a business partner I'd worked with before, and evaluating it. And I tasted what they had made, and I immediately saw a way to solve a problem that the doctor told me that day that I was diagnosed. He said, Alan, this is how you're going to live your life. If it tastes good, don't eat it. If it tastes bad, eat it.
Exactly.
And that didn't sound too good to me.
Yeah, it's typical doctor line there. So let's kind of just dig in real quick, get a little geeky. What is it about the secret sauce here, pun intended, I guess? You know, why mushrooms, or it's the root variable, really, mycelia? Tell us about why is that one the one that was chosen? There's other things, right?
Yeah, well, indeed, fermentation has been around forever.
Yeah.
You
The
know,
Romans, I think, maybe even before that.
well, maybe earlier than that. I mean,
Probably.
if because at the time it was about preserving something. You fermented it so it would last a long time without refrigeration. So, we as Americans consume about 70% of all our calories are actually fermented food. But it's really simple organisms that have been used like yeast or bacterium. And that's great if you want to make alcohol or things like that. But when you want to really transform something, you need a much more robust organism. And that's what mushrooms are. The root system of mushrooms are transformative. They're biological machines, and they can do some amazing things. They tend to transform their environment. So if something is toxic, they detoxify it. That's their kind of role in the forest.
And you have a massive facility in Denver. I know you started out in someone's house, but that must have
Yeah,
been,
we did in the basement.
that must have been interesting. I bet the police came by once in a while. But anyway, do you get like truckloads of mushrooms in? What does this look like?
It looks like tiny little vials when they arrive originally. We don't need that anymore. So we bought them from universities, their mushroom collection. So that way we have certified strains, and then they're deep frozen at negative 80 degrees Celsius. So all biological functions have stopped. And then we grow those into big tanks. These are 90,000 liter tanks. So if you come by and see our facility and you're looking up, it's 30 feet tall, these tanks.
Yeah, like small grain elevator looking things.
Exactly. Looks like a brewery, looks like a microbrewery when you look at all the stainless steel and the piping.
Right. That's fascinating. And so let's just talk about the industry a little bit. Impossible Foods, and all these different companies have been coming out of the woodwork, non-meat protein companies, still kind of hot. Some of the stocks are struggling, but a lot of nutritionists are warning about health implications of salt and heavy processing because there's a lot of processing going on there. And I guess, how is Myco and the old, the mushroom process, how are you solving a lot of that negativity? Do you help there?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because you break it down this way. There are issues around processing, and there's issues around different ingredients that you use. I call them the sin ingredients of sugar, salt, and fat. That's what makes things taste great. But if we use too much of it, it's really bad for you. So there's got to be a balancing. So the way we use our fermentation, it's a great way is to explain our protein. So we take a blend of pea protein and rice protein and blend it together in a ratio that makes equivalent to beef as far as protein quality. So the 9 essential amino acids in the right ratio. So once you have that, if you're a food company and you're going to make a burger out of it, if you go to taste it, the first thing you notice, the aroma is terrible and the taste is horrible. And so what do you do?
Besides that, it's great. Oh, God.
Besides that, it's wonderful.
Oh,
And so what you do, Dean, is you add sugar, salt, and fat till you overcome those bad tastes. You can't do much about the aroma. So you end up with a plant-based product that is questionable whether it's better for you or not. So what we do is the opposite of what the food industry has done. We take that same blend of pea and rice, we put it in a fermenter, we put in our shiitake mycelia, the roots of mushrooms from a shiitake mushroom, and we let it ferment. And the fermentation process transforms that material. So think about what fermentation is. It's basically a digestive process. So that material is bound very tight. And as the mushrooms start to consume it, it starts breaking those bonds. And the first thing that goes are the volatiles, the aroma. So that nasty aroma goes away. And aroma is
got
a
it.
big part of taste. So that goes away. And then it consumes a lot of the compounds that contribute to bitterness, sourness, astringency. All of that goes away. It gets rid of things like phytic acid that you really don't want in your food. That's a naturally occurring compound that blocks your ability to absorb things like iron. So you want that out. So it transforms this ingredient. So now post fermentation, I need a fraction of the amount of sugar, salt, and fat to make it taste good. And so that's
right.
the difference.
Yeah. See, thanks for answering the question in layman's terms at the end. So your business partners, the manufacturers of food, can actually use less sugar and salt, which is a great health and wellness benefit, it sounds like.
Absolutely. And that's our goal, is how do we make better for you products?
Exactly. And can you talk a little bit about your target markets and customers, and who's using this in their products?
Yeah, I can't talk about too many of them because we're under NDA on who we work with, but there are some that are public I can talk about, like Planterra.
Planterra is good, yeah.
Yep, they have their brand called Ozo Burger. So our protein is in that. And you'll find that their ingredient deck is much smaller than the competition.
I bet.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like something you would make in your kitchen when you look at the ingredient deck. So it's a very, very nice consumer friendly deck because they can use less of those ingredients that we really don't want to overuse, like, sugar and salt particularly.
Right.
I think from fat point of view, that's what gives the flavor. And people want that kind of indulgent taste. So in my personal opinion, I like keeping the fat a little bit higher so it tastes really good, and then lower that sugar salt content to make it better for you.
I totally agree. It's one of the negatives. It's like you grill up a veggie kind of burger and it doesn't grill up. You can't char it. There's no medium. There's no, and being able to do this. So your process actually helps that taste a little bit. The actual that cooking brings to it, but sometimes even burning it a touch.
It does. And what's interesting, it was a surprise to us when we saw this after we did our original fermentation, is that it transforms that ingredient to hold water and oil better. So when you put that into
Perfect.
a burger and then you cook it, it comes out juicier, which is what you want. You don't want a dried burger. That's not interesting at all.
No, never is. I've been to restaurants that are paying way too much for a dry burger too. I'm getting by the way, I'm getting hungry right now.
But we're doing a tasting right now. If you're nearby, come on over and
Wish I was. Are you on the coast or are you in Denver?
I'm in Denver.
Oh, nice, nice. I would definitely take you up on that. How do you kind of, when you look at, you're solving problems for industry, things like flavor clarifiers and bitter blockers, and
Yep.
you mentioned meat solutions, fermented protein, sugar reduction. Are those like the main, pain points, as we like to say in the business school, that you're solving?
Yeah, we're solving multiple pain points. One is we consume as a population way too much sugar and salt. I mean, double, triple the amount that we should consume.
Is the
And
U.S. the highest there, or are other countries catching up
there's
now?
other countries that are higher, but we're
Yeah,
definitely at the top of the list. But what's interesting is, most chronic diseases are based on what we eat. Like hypertension, way too much salt, sugar, diabetes. You look, obesity. These are all chronic diseases that we actually can change by how we eat and what we eat. But you've got to give people options that taste good. And
right.
so what we try to solve for the industry is not like, hey, you can reduce 100% of the salt in this, and no one's going to buy it.
Right.
How do you do that? So, like, I got to tell you, yesterday I tried a potato chip with 70% less salt. Now, that sounds like it would taste horrible, and it tasted exactly like the control that we had next to it with 100% salt that you would get in a packaged potato chip, and it was amazing. And it's by using our technology, a bitter blocker. It's actually a flavor clarifier, is what we refer to it now,
Mhm.
because it not only reduces bitterness, it clarifies the other natural flavors that are there. Because if you think about, give you a great example, is chocolate. Chocolate is naturally bitter. So when you're going to make chocolate, you need to add enough sugar to overcome that bitterness, and then add even more sugar to make it sweet. So I'll eat it. Now, when we add our Clear IQ to chocolate, you can cut the sugar in half because we reduce the bitterness, so you don't have to mask it with sugar.
So you're not masking. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So now I'm getting an idea of all your target markets. This is much broader than I thought. This is a massive, let's call it a TAM. Your total addressable market is in the billions here.
Oh, definitely. Because if you think about, all the foods that have salt in it, all the foods that have sugar in it, all the,
Just walk down the grocery aisle. It's awful. There's
it,
so much to be converted. And then when they say these are like light chips, you still read the contents and you're like, oh my gosh,
yeah,
I'm not letting my kids eat these. I'll eat them. Anyway,
yeah, there you go.
exactly.
Save your kids.
It's so, we Revive, our sponsor, we spend a lot of time in the health, beauty, and wellness space, and it's all about clean and green, from packaging to ingredients. So you are a major thrust in that effort in the food side. Do you get much pushback about, hey, we can't transform our entire system? You guys are too early for, from the big fat, slow, let's say, food conglomerates out there. That's a buzzword we call them at Kellogg, BFSs, big fat and slows, because it's very tough for them to switch the aircraft carrier. Yeah, we used to, but I just BFS. It's a Venn diagram, works well. But yeah, how do you help the elephant? How do you help these elephants dance? I mean, you're obviously
Yeah,
you're growing like crazy, so it's working in some cases.
yeah, it was interesting. Early days, and I won't mention names.
No.
I will tell you a funny story there. So I went on a trip about chocolate. So how do we reduce sugar in chocolate, make it healthier? Because there's a lot of great compounds in chocolate that get kind of overwhelmed with the sugar, and so the benefits aren't really there. So I went around to one of the large companies out there, met with the head of chocolate,
Hmm.
and pitched my idea to him, and he goes, "No, no. If we could put more sugar in, we would. It reduces their overall cost." And so
Exactly.
and so that mentality has changed over the years.
Right.
We've been around 9 years, so that was 7 years ago. But today there's really not much pushback. It's how to innovate and how to reformulate existing products and to create new ones from scratch. But everybody seems to be moving in the right direction. It's just slow for the big ones. The little ones are much
Uh,
faster.
I agree. I was making fun of them. I mean, you met with what I call the VP of No. Every company has one or had one, and
Yeah.
it's changing. You can't go to a food show these days. They're tripping over themselves to get to the right booths to find out the technology. And as a matter of fact, I did bump into you at CES, and you were just debuting some new products under your new brand called Good Side. So I'm not sure if you're just an arms dealer anymore or a DTC, direct to consumer company, but you were debuting, I think, mushroom milk there. And also, were you doing cheese at that point too?
Yeah, so what we're trying to show off is our different technologies and really get insight for our B2B customers. So
Ah,
Goodside Food is a way for us to take our texturized protein, it's got 3 ingredients, and get it into the market where consumers can buy it. It's really easy, it's shelf stable. You hydrate it, you use it as a meat replacement into your current dishes. We showed a chili there at CES. If you tried the chili with our plant-based cheese on it,
I missed that. Yep.
yeah, it was a hot one, and so it's being very well received out there. It's on Amazon under Meatless Crumbles, Good Side Food, and it's doing very, very well. But we're really getting insight so we can share with our B2B customers going, hey, this is the kind of messaging that works. This is the messaging that doesn't work. Here's what consumers are saying. So we're gathering all that intel to make it easier for our customers to launch innovative products. So, we have a limited patience, as we
Yep.
work with companies to get some of our innovation out. And it's another way to go out there and say, okay, look, it works. Here's the milk as you saw at CES. I don't know if you got to taste it or not.
I did.
Um,
It was good.
yeah, yeah. And so with that, it's like, hey, here's the milk. We'll get it out there because no one's launched it yet, and get feedback to share with our B2B customers so they could launch something as well. So it's really intel, consumer direct intel.
Yeah, it's kind of smart. It's like, yeah, we're kind of in the consumer business, but it has a means to an end or a purpose to better help our partners and become a more systemic part of the supply chain. So it's proof of concepts in some, well, who knows? It could turn into a whole new thing.
Yeah.
Um, when you were going through that, you made me think of some other things besides reducing sugar. Are you helping these big company or society, I guess, reduce cost? Number one, like your chocolate guy, the VP of No, and are you reducing food waste at all?
Yeah, two really separate things. I'll talk about reducing food waste.
Yeah.
So fortunately, as a people, we waste about 30 or 40% of the food that's produced every year.
Well,
And
that's higher than I thought.
yeah, and so it's really big. We're developing ways to find food waste, and before it's not waste that people have consumed and thrown in the trash,
Mhm.
but food that would go to waste, and extract sugars from it to grow mushroom-based protein. So if you think about that, what do you need to grow an organism? You need carbon or an energy source like sugar, and you need nitrogen. So those two things are the main components you need. And so an inexpensive carbon source is critical to really grow these organisms and do that in a very high volume way.
So you're not talking about just eliminating food waste. You're saying just take byproducts of some food manufacturing and use it to make other things.
To make high quality protein. Because
Right.
if the
Because
population
they're
really,
throwing out their byproducts usually. That's part of their
exactly,
manufacturing process. That's brilliant.
right. Yeah, if you think about it, if we grow as a world population from 7 billion to 10 billion by 2040 or 2050, depending on what you're reading,
That's the
there's a,
forecast. Yep.
yeah, it's a 50 to 70% increase in protein requirement. So we really need to utilize this food that would go to waste in
Hmm.
a way that we can upcycle it, get it into the food stream, and feed people this way, because it'll be a huge way to achieve our exponentially growing needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And in that vein, what have been some of your toughest challenges in terms of this food innovation um, sector
Uh,
you're in? Because I see, you hear, what consumers see, and even business folks, is all the brands on the shelves that are just sprouting out, these little indie brands. And one of the reasons people have invested in your company, we thought it was a fantastic investment, is there's not enough supply chain to actually drive that next generation of food companies. They need more technology like yours. What's been challenging really to get that going at scale?
it's so interesting. What the big challenge was about infrastructure. So, when I originally started
Oh,
talking to venture capitalists, they're like, no, 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 we don't want to invest in anything that's like steel in the ground. You know,
right.
like, well,
You
we
have a
don't.
warehouse? What?
Yeah, and so we built an 86,000 square foot facility here in Denver. It's the largest fermentation facility of its kind in the world. So
State of
this,
the art too.
it's state of the art. It looks absolutely gorgeous, and it can produce significant quantities of our various products that
Mhm.
we sell in over 100 countries right now, and so it's getting people to understand we make something physical. You have to have a physical location. You can't do it all through commands, because nothing like this has ever existed before.
No,
So
and exactly. And most
doing it
people are
better,
using
just use command. Yeah.
right. Most those who are in the food industry, most people use co-packers and co-mans. All this, they're actually making the food themselves. No, you are the core source that will drive so many different. And how's the competition looking? I'm always happy when there's a couple competitors move in, because it means you're in the right market, right place, right time.
Yeah, there's a lot of competitors in the space, which I'm excited too, because as I was saying, if population grows the way it looks like it's going to grow, we're going to need every form of protein we can produce, whether it's animal-based, plant-based, cultured, mushroom-based, whatever. We're going to need all of it, and I'm excited to be part of the space. It was I've been in it now 9 years, and just amazing, the potential to really contribute to the solution out there, how we feed everybody, and do it in a way that really meets people's taste. The great thing about what we make, it can be flavored any way you want, shaped into anything, alternative meats or alternative dairy,
Mhm.
and we finally now have broke the code on how to make alternative cheeses actually function.
Right. I love the passion that and your story, how it kind of came out of a personal journey with diabetes, or solving it, or at least conquering your own. I bet there's some fun stuff going on inside your test kitchens.
Oh yeah, we have so much fun. I will tell you
Any
this.
explosions or anything like that?
Yeah, we probably had a few of those in the early days, especially when we were in the basement. That was interesting. But we're developing very novel new flavors. We just was creating a new ice cream yesterday with some
Mm,
very unique flavors in it, and it's just amazing. It's what you can do with plant-based, have non-dairy, because I'm lactose intolerant too. I've got all these wonderful food
mm.
issues. And so having a non-dairy ice cream that is really creamy is just amazing for
Very
me.
tough. Yeah, it's usually grainy. That's fascinating. I have to taste that. And here's a question I asked food companies about plant-based. They're like, yeah, we're going to do a plant-based fish. We're doing a plant-based burger. And I'm like, Well, wait a minute. Are we just taking the same ingredients and shaping them into things now? Or what is the uniqueness around plant-based that actually replicates a fish, poultry, or meat product?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting where we're at on this journey of using plants as a
Mm,
or of the main part of our diet. You know, and when we stop trying to copy animal-based meats
yeah.
uh, and animal-based dairy products, when we stop trying to copy it and do whatever the best the plant-based can do and having unique stuff, that's when we've really made it. But to get people to come over and try, like replacing part of a meal or replacing a whole meal with plant-based, you've got to make it familiar. Culturally,
Uh,
if you typically like a heavily fat, greasy burger, we need to give you a plant version of that, so you don't feel like you're giving something up. And then once you have that, then you may want to, well, maybe I'll try something else. And I start, because that wasn't too bad. I liked it.
got it. Yeah.
I lost a half a pound when I got on the scale the next day. That felt really good, that kind of thing.
So you're appealing to the taste buds and the mind, basically. There, it's a transitionary phase for some
Yeah.
countries. So eventually, you might have like a burger fish, or who knows.
Yeah, that sounds
you,
good.
you just brand your own stuff. The Myco dog.
Yeah.
So what are some of the big bets you're making on the future of the company? What's coming up next?
It's all about sugar salt reduction. It's about protein, and it's about food as medicine. So we're really focused on that. How do we reduce calories and increase nutrition? So, most of the food that we eat is very calorie dense and nutrition light, and we want to change that. And creating foods that are just full of fiber and vitamins, minerals, and so forth, that just adds to a healthy diet, rather than taking a pill that if you're going to take a multivitamin, your body can't really absorb that very well. You're going to get rid of most of that.
Right.
You're not going to be able to absorb it. But if it's in the food, your body tends to absorb it pretty readily. So, that's where we're going.
Yeah, in the health, beauty, and wellness space, we spend a lot of time on personalization, taking different types of disparate data about the person to then prescribe the right things for them, whether it's anything from skincare to supplements. So, under the auspices of food as medicine, you could essentially customize different foods for different body types and different issues, things like that.
Oh, absolutely. Because if you think of the compounds that are naturally in mushrooms, they're
Hmm.
anti-inflammatory, antioxidants, cognitive improvement. There's all kinds of interesting compounds that could be blended in different combinations and then added to food, to create truly food as medicine.
Yeah, the one of my friends, Naveen Jain, has a company called Biomes. So they essentially are taking that data and customizing food regimens and vitamins and supplements and things to kind of impact, different people's livelihoods. And the data is really amazing. And I asked him the other day, I'm like, why can't we just do that with food? He says, we can specifically tailor diets to people. But I was talking about more at your level. You're at the, you're down at the core DNA of, but the ingredients that go into those foods, probably not the most sexy topic in the world, but very smart, very timely, especially when you look at the clean and green type ingredients and getting the junk out, because that's part of the journey. And the other part is actually the right nutrition, right?
Exactly, exactly. And the more we can just slip into food and have that to where you eat whatever it is you want to eat, and it's got all the right nutritional balance that you need, and you don't have to start worried about it. But we do have a big regulatory burden to get through, because the
Yeah,
FDA allows these kind of things to be added to certain things and not to others.
right.
And so, the regulatory has to evolve over time as well.
Yeah, well said. There's lots of challenges there. Any other insights on where you think this industry is going in the last 30 seconds here?
Yeah, I really think the industry is on the right track. This, what's happened with COVID, people understand the link between health and nutrition better than they ever have.
Uh,
And they're taking more responsibility for their own health and health outcomes. And I'm really excited to be part of a company that's actually having an impact worldwide on health and nutrition and making people feel better and live a healthier life. So it's super exciting.
yeah, it really is, Alan. It sounds awesome. I want to thank you for joining us. You've been listening to Alan Hahn. He's the CEO of Myco Technologies. This is Dean Tobias with the Reboot Chronicles. I want to thank you for joining us today, and we will see you soon.